Hello, this is Dr. Survam Patel, the managing partner of Compliant Clients, and you're listening to the Lean Line podcast. Today, we have a very special guest to help us discuss an important topic that affects all personal injury law firms. Not actually even all personal injury law firms, all businesses in general. It's how does the workplace culture affect the company? Specifically to personal injury law firms, how does the workplace culture affect personal injury case outcomes? So I'm going to be introducing our guest. His name is Dr. Scott Tauber. Hey, Dr. Tauber, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. So tell us a little bit about yourself as a former practicing physician. What are you up to these days?
Yep. Yeah, well, you're right. I practiced for over 20 years in the trenches, if you will, and seeing patients and personal injury patients and working obviously and having multiple offices along the way, multiple staff. But in the last several years, I've started and I'm now the COO and Director of Education at the American Institute of Personal Injury Physicians. And I've also started another company as well called PI Connection, which brings advanced diagnostics into providers' offices to help them identify injuries that will then be able to be given to practicing PI attorneys to help them maximize the outcomes for their clients and settlements.
Sounds like you got your hands full with a burgeoning company as well as maintaining an existing one. And
Mm-hmm.
just like myself, you have a fair amount of experience talking with personal injury law firms. In addition, of course, you have a large amount of experience of talking with personal injury healthcare providers. And so I think you know better than a lot of others that like the happier that employees, whether they're working at a healthcare practice or at a law firm, the happier they are at their job, the better they're actually going to treat others, not just their own coworkers, but their own patients, or for law firms like their own clients. And thinking of it from the claimant side, being an injured claimant is very scary, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like the first time, hopefully the first time you've ever been involved in a serious accident, and you're having to deal or be exposed to a bunch of legal stuff and healthcare stuff, most likely that you've never had to do before. And you, as the injured claimant, need to put your trust into doctors and the personal injury legal team. And you have to just trust that it's like they're on your side. They know what's going on. They're going to take great care of you, and everything is seamless on the back end. And they're trying everything they can to get you the outcome you deserve when you were injured in an accident through no fault of your own. So, can you speak a little bit like what is your thoughts on how the workplace culture, maybe specific to a personal injury law firm, can positively or negatively affect case outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to even back up just a little bit, is like whom you choose, whether it's your attorney or whether it's your providers, are critical to the outcomes. And then going into exactly what you said, if it's a good environment, it's a well trained staff, whether it's for the law firm or for the provider's office. That's critical because, as you mentioned, someone in an accident, they're in pain. They may have a traumatic brain injury. They are now dealing with, phone calls and letters from insurance carriers and all kinds of different things. And it can be overwhelming. And I think sometimes we, on the other side of the reception desk, if you will, we take it for granted because it's something that we do every day. And so to us, it's second nature, and we throw out terms and we do things sometimes without explaining. And I think sometimes we have to take a little step back and put ourselves in the shoes of the injured patient client and understand that this is all new to them, and maybe just go a little bit slower, maybe explain things a little bit more, take your time, explain forms that are being presented to them. And if your staff knows that and they're well trained and they're happy, that's obviously going to come across. I mean, you walk into any office, whether it's a law firm, a business, or a provider's office, you know if people are happy or not. Like you just get the vibes, right?
Mm.
So we've all been to those kind of offices. So it's really important that it comes across.
Absolutely. So, like, let's talk a little bit more about some specifics about, like, hey, how a strong company culture at a law firm, at an injury law firm, can actually translate into like successful case outcomes and greater client satisfaction. Like, one of the main topics to that helps or that is a benefit of having a great culture is having high employee engagement and motivation. Right? Like in personal injury, it's a grind. It's very tough. It's very fast paced. A lot of these, law firms have a huge docket, and if they don't have a huge docket, they're really in the weeds on a day-to-day basis with a never-ending task list of things to do. It's very rare that they can just like anyone at a law firm can be like, I am done for the day. I have nothing else to do. I have nothing else to follow up on. Like, if you think like that, like, hey, you're either in the 1% or you're probably missing a couple of things. But we also know that when an employee of the law firm or even the partner of the law firm, they are engaged and motivated, they are going to go the extra mile to either research and prepare for this case, advocate extra for their clients, leading to hopefully more thorough and effective like legal representation. So like, what are your thoughts on like about just the topic of like employee engagement and motivation specific to injury law firms?
Yeah, motivate having engagement and motivation to reach out to clients on a regular basis. That's extremely important. And even I know depending, like you said, on the docket, it could be a little bit difficult at time. But even reaching out to providers, incentivizing the law firm team to reach out and see what's going on your cases will be. I can share with you from the other side, from a provider's perspective, that would be great if a law firm could communicate and engage and reach out and understand what's going on and what's going on with their clients. So if you can incentivize and motivate your staff to make those phone calls to those doctors and find out what's going on with their client, I mean, that will have a successful outcome, because how many times have attorneys opened up a file and they say, well, I wish somebody would have told me about this, right? So they assume that the doctor is going to communicate, but how would it be if they trained or had a patient or client liaison that actually just physically called or emailed or somehow communicated with doctors? That's going to have a much better outcome. So happy staff, engaged staff, having systems in place, better communication will absolutely lead to a better outcome. And you won't have any surprises when you open up that file in 6 months and realize, I wish somebody would have told me about that, because we could have probably overcame that issue, but now we got to play the cards that we've been dealt.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That kind of leads me into, it's a great segue into the next topic of, the benefits of having a great company culture. It's collaboration and teamwork, because in the example that you just gave, I hear time and time again, sometimes there can be a division in a law firm, not just because they're in different departments, but because of like unintentional or maybe intentional finger pointing between, as an example, the pre-litigation department and the litigation department, right? You're laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking about, but if you have great teamwork and a good culture, it's going to foster a lot of collaboration among all of the law firms' different departments. And again, smaller law firms may not have different departments, but you're still performing all the duties of these larger law firms that have different departments. You're just wearing a lot more hats. So this applies to any type of law firm, small or large. That good culture would really foster a sense of teamwork and collaboration. So let's just say, going back to your example, like later on down the road of the case, the litigation team discovers like, hey, there was something that was overlooked by the pre-litigation team, whatever it may be. If there was good teamwork and good culture in that law firm, they would have positive steps to address this, give constructive feedback to the pre-litigation team, so this thing wouldn't happen again in the future, right? They would work collaboratively, be like, hey, let's see what went on here, versus if it wasn't the greatest, teamwork, maybe somebody gets called out in a Zoom call publicly. Maybe a pretty angry email gets sent out and the bosses are CC'd, and that, helps contribute to a negative and a toxic workplace. That's not really what you want. And again, the impact of all of this is like when you have enhanced collaboration among, doesn't matter if it's different departments, at the end of the day, it's just different people, right? People collaborating with people, you improve your strategy for your cases, you get better at problem solving, You get better at identifying problems ahead of time and preventing them in the future, which is really crucial for like complex and even not so complex personal injury cases that have a lot of moving pieces, right? There's so much room for someone within the law firm, without the outside the law firm, to drop the ball. But having a great culture can like result in more like comprehensive and like better like legal solutions for clients. So and to translate that, to take it a step further, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. It's like you said before, take a step out, or put yourself in the injured claimant's shoes, right? They don't know all this stuff that went back and forth. They didn't know what happened between the pre-lit team and the lit team and who dropped the ball and whatever. They just may or may not come to find out there is a crack in their case, or that it's inefficient and things like that. And to them, that's inconsistent service quality, right? Because like a lot of people, they turn to Yelp, Google, whatever, to social media to figure out like, hey, who's a good law firm? And so it doesn't even matter. No, it doesn't really matter. It still matters. But like if you have a great online reputation, or if you have no reputation, and you somehow tell the injured client that maybe you haven't yet signed up, they're like, hey, you are great. You take care of all your clients, but for one reason or another, the ball's dropped. Right? The ball is dropped for this one client. Well, that's not consistent, right? That's not consistent. And if you have a great culture, you can probably take a step towards providing better, more consistent, high level of care for your clients, which obviously improves their client satisfaction, makes them trust you, makes, you have a lot more of a loyal base. So anyways, I spoke a lot there, but yeah, tell me what you think about this example and how it translates from your point of view.
What you say is absolutely correct. In my view, and from my experience of working with kind of bringing together providers and PI attorneys, I've never heard the phrase "stop collaborating." There's too much communication. Stop communicating. I've never heard those terms, and in fact, one of the biggest issues that I kind of hear just from attorneys to providers is there's a lack of communication. But if you can bring that culture to the attorney's office, where you communicate and you have, I'm a big advocate of safety nets. You bring somebody new in, or team members, as you said, they're doing a million things on a case. How about certain checklists or safety nets to make sure that the ball doesn't get dropped on that one case, because that one case is really important to that client. So maybe you've got 500 cases, and maybe only on a percentage basis, you only screwed up 1 out of 500, but that one is really important to them. So collaborating and communicating, having team meetings. I'm a big advocate of team meetings, even if they're, and I know, when you have like staff meetings, the connotation is like equals gripe session. And that's not what I'm talking about. It's just very focused, what's going on these cases once a week, let's just have 10, 15 minutes and let's all just kind of come together, because everybody goes off into their own little office and they do their thing. And you kind of forget that you're actually on the team. So team building, collaboration, communication is really important. And if you can just do these little things, it does foster a really good environment. And I think it will come across, absolutely will come across to the client patient, whether you're on the legal side or on the medical side.
Perfect. And before we get into like some recommendations that Dr. Tauber and I have on how to improve your company culture, I wanted to talk about like other benefits that would help the law firm overall. Obviously, like we've been alluding to it, but to have a reduction in workplace conflict. When you have great company culture, you minimize the amount of conflict because you're promoting, like Dr. Tauber said, open communication, mutual respect among all employees. Like I'll tell you a story about one of my pharmacies. I own a few pharmacies. We came to hire someone that we thought was a good hire, but I came to find out from my staff that this person was causing everyone to kind of like almost dread coming into work. And everyone was having to walk on eggshells around this person. And I didn't know about any of this. And as soon as I found out, I was like, unacceptable, right? I was like, hey, like I don't even know how to say the phrase. I might kill it, but it's one bad apple spoils the bushel. I think that's what it is. Just go with me on it. Yeah, let's just say that's what it was. But yeah, I was like, hey, because I think I pride myself on trying to work really hard to make sure my company culture is as good as it can be, and I don't want to let anyone spoil that. So after even having a talk with that person and the behavior continued, that person was, by the way, great at some of the aspects of their job. I was like, no one person can be worth that, right? And so that's also important for any company to also learn, like, hey, no one person should affect everyone else's mood and hence productivity, right? Because this becomes equally even more important when you're trying to retain employees. Think and attract new talent. Those are two separate topics, huge topics right there. But employee retention, no matter what company you're at, it's really important, because think how long it took for you to train and teach your favorite paralegal, your favorite case manager, your favorite attorney. It doesn't matter. What would you do if you lost them, right? It's so much cheaper and easier just to keep your core group, your existing employees happy and motivated versus trying to find new people. And if you have a negative workplace culture, people will find out very quickly. Think how hard it is for you to attract and retain talent. There's companies like Glassdoor out there where people have no problem putting your company on blast, especially if they're an ex-employee. So like Dr. Tauber, could you talk a little bit from your experience? Because you're a business owner just like me. You work on the healthcare practice side. You talk with tons of, personal injury law firms. What's your thoughts on the importance of employee retention, attracting new talent, and just in general reducing workplace conflicts as it relates to, improving company culture?
Well, absolutely. I mean, what you said is perfect. It's so much easier to maintain and retain than to go through the hiring process. So if you can, like exactly what you did, no one person is above the entire company or all your employees. Because over time, if you would have left that person in place, even if they were the greatest employee, their attitude is going to be pervasive. It's going to affect everybody. And then instead of one person, now you might have 12 people that, are not happy. And then you have to go, and clean all that up. So absolutely, it's kind of in the, goes along the lines of in the medical field, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you want to take that into the legal profession or any business, if you prevent people from leaving, if you keep them happy, if you take care of them, and you just have to be, I believe you have to be hands-on. I mean, so many offices are hands-off. They don't even know what's going on in their offices. And I know this can't always happen, but really, if you have a family member in your company or somebody who's in the trenches for you, that's always the best, because they will care the most. And I do hate to say it, but there's some employees out there that just kind of go through the motions. So you kind of have to sift through there. It's always easier to retain or maintain who you have, because if you start all over with somebody new, I mean, how much time, effort, and money do you put into somebody to bring them up to speed? Whether you're medical or whether you're legal, and who does the training? On my view, a lot of times doctors leave the training. The doctor doesn't do the training, and I'm sure in law offices, the main attorney doesn't do the training. It's usually the oldest living person that knows everything. So I would call it jokingly, I say the oldest living assistant in the office. It trains the new person, and that can become problematic. So maintain, communicate, collaborate, have a really good work environment. Be hands-on, but I wouldn't, don't micromanage either. That's a pretty much a no-go for people. You got to let them have some reign.
Absolutely. I think that is really key insight that, not just personal injury law firms, but, business owners in general that can learn from. And I wanted to switch gears now. It's like, hey, we talked about at length extensively, and I think it's important that we did, the benefits of having a positive workplace culture and how it translates into, better case outcomes, and not just experiencing it from the employee side or the attorney side, but also thinking of it from the injured claimant side. I wanted to then switch gears now to the second half of this to talk about, like, hey, what are things you can actually do, right, to improve the workplace culture, right? There's so many different ideas I have, and I wanted to draw on personal experience. So, like, if I had to compare myself to the different sizes of a personal injury law firm, I cannot relate to a really, really big law firm, right? Let's just say a law firm has 1,000 employees, right? I don't have the background in that. So that being said, just, whoever's watching this, take it with a grain of salt. I consider myself small business, right? I started out in 2017 or 2016 with my first pharmacy that I was owning. I had less than 15 people. Now, through the growth of that company and acquiring a couple more, I'm still relatively small. I have between 150 and 250 employees across the companies, but my thought process didn't really change on how I approach how I can improve, you know, how can I improve the company culture? Here are things I'll tell you that I personally haven't done yet. Have you ever? Do you remember back in grade school when your elementary classroom and there were posters, or flyers on the wall, and it just said one word. It said like responsibility, and there'd be like an image of like an eagle or something, and then like three words or something underneath it. Like, I don't really know the name for that. I just remember I saw a bunch of those, like, just one word, a nice, majestic animal, most likely, or something. And it was just like, it was advocating for like personality traits that you'd want to be, right? Responsible, friendly. I don't know what, I mean, there's just a lot of crazy words that they're putting up there. To me, that's what I think a lot of, like, maybe that's like taking the easy way out, in the sense that, like, if somebody posts their mission, their values, and the mission values, I forgot the other one, and they just post it somewhere. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to have those. I think it's great, because that way you guys have a mantra to turn to. But if you just create something and you just post it on a wall, that's not implementing anything, right? You're just hoping people are gonna be like, hey, be nice, like, be respectful. Like, that's not really going to get you anywhere. So what has worked for me, and I've talked with some law firms, like, hey, what's really working for you guys, like low hanging fruit? Because some of the law firms I talk with, like, they have like really full fleshed like company culture ideas and things. But I was like, well, a lot of people don't, and they don't want to get overwhelmed. So I was like, hey, in this podcast, like, I'm just going to limit my feedback as to things that like anyone can do, which should take them like not much time at all, maybe a day, maybe a couple of hours to implement. So one of them is like, hey, feedback mechanisms. When you have established like open channels for feedback, it might be a meeting, it might be anonymous surveys. You can use Google Forms, it's free. You can have suggestion boxes, like where you can just place a card and, they fill something out and honestly put it in there. Or if you want it to be more direct, having regular one-on-one meetings with your teams and employees to ask them, like, hey, what are things that are working? What are things that are not working? What are areas that you think we can improve upon, and solicit their feedback, not just from like an employee perspective, but also think outside of the box. Like, hey, what are things that we can work on that doesn't even have to do with workplace culture, such as like, hey, this is where, again, I can plug myself in, AIPIP can plug themselves in. It's like, hey, you're having trouble getting clients to appointments, it's taking up a lot of my time. Hey, what do you think about compliant clients, right? Or, hey, we don't really know, this physician that we're working with, they're continually like, they just don't understand, personal injury. Like, maybe either we work with someone else, or maybe we kind of connect them to AIPIP for some education and things like that. So this is a way where you can just say, hey, there's just room to have open communication to improve the work-life culture. So these are like feedback mechanisms, and it should go both ways, right?
Yeah.
If you're an attorney and you want some feedback, you'd be like, hey, how do I improve? How do I make myself better for you? How can I help you solve problems? What can I do better so we have a better relationship together? Don't just make it a one-way street. That's one of my main first ones. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. See if you want to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I do like surveys, as you mentioned, and some of the things that you just said. One of the things that I do for new employees is, and one of the questions that I ask, and of course they always say yes, but I do ask, are you open to constructive criticism? Everybody always says yes, but then when it happens, maybe not.
Yeah,
Their
it
interpretation
depends on
of
what you're
constructive
saying.
may be
Yeah.
different than my interpretation of constructive, but. Obviously, you want to set your team, and as an attorney, you're a business owner, attorneys, providers, you want to set your team up for success, right? You having feedback, survey, anonymous or even not anonymous, is critical because your team and your staff are in the trenches, and they're the ones probably calling the insurance carriers, calling the patients, calling the providers, making sure they show up, getting the report. I mean, they're in there, and what can you do again constructively to make their life, and they may have some really great ideas. I mean, doesn't mean you have to take every single idea, but doing a survey, or if they are maybe having some issues, giving them some constructive criticism, or giving them the tools. And I go back to having those safety nets, because in the course of the day, I mean, I just come from it from a clinical perspective, and it's the same on the legal side as it is in really probably the provider side. Is you're busy running around, right? And then all of a sudden something comes up that's really important. And if you don't have that little safety net or a checklist or something to just kind of refer to, nobody can remember all of the steps of a personal injury case. I mean, there's literally probably, 1,000 steps from the beginning to the end of a personal injury case. You mean to tell me that your team members, whatever side you're on, legal, medical, are going to remember every single step every single time, and every single step. And then, of course, you've got to train. So it goes back to the things that we talked about before, retaining people. Imagine trying to train somebody brand new to remember all those 1,000 steps, just to remember, without any sort of, safety nets to ensure that we're helping them be successful. So yeah, feedback, surveys, constructive criticism, all of that, in my view, is setting up team members for success. And when they're successful, then it goes back to what we've been talking about. They're happy, right? They like to come into work. They're not, like dreading coming into work. Like, gee, I'll think of anything other than, going to work today. And then that's pervasive throughout your entire firm. And that is certainly translated to the clients.
Absolutely. I think you we really understand what these personal injury law firms are going through, especially you can probably tell that there seems to be a definite lack of a really proper feedback mechanisms in place for many companies. Now, I'm not picking on law firms. I asked other pharmacy owners, they're like, no, I've never asked my pharmacist or technician for what they thought. So I was like, okay, well, you
Yeah.
do better. You should be more aware. And now the next thing, like, it kind of translates into the next thing. It's like addressing like work life balance, right? COVID really shook things up for all companies, especially companies who are like, you have to go into the office, right? But then
Mhm.
COVID happened, and they're like, okay, well, I guess we can't go in the office, but we still need you to work. So it kind of really opened everyone's eyes to the power, or the ability, maybe more so, to work and have a life balance around it. And it's written now that hopefully, I would like to say, we're all hopefully past COVID at this point for the most part. Work life balance is still ever present. It's in everyone's minds. And it's not just about where you work, right? It's about meeting your team where their needs are at. And like, I know a lot of companies, like, I like to pick on tech companies. My wife actually came from tech. She worked for Google, YouTube, Dell. I was very jealous, right? I worked in pharmacy. My view was a bunch of racks of pill bottles. I didn't even have a window where I worked. So I was very jealous about all the perks she got. But when I got down to brass tacks, like, I was asking her, like, hey, what are like those perks, and how much do they mean to you, right? She was like, a lot, some of them were great and some of them didn't really affect me at all, right? So a lot of companies, they might just kind of look at those big companies like, oh my god, they got a ping pong table, they got beer on tap, they got XYZ, they got couches, and that type of setup. And or another company might be like, hey, they just let all their employees work from home. You don't know what your employees want. You can
Mhm.
assume that, and a lot of people do, but you don't know until you ask them, which was
Right.
kind of going back to the first thing, which was like feedback mechanism. Like, get feedback from your team to figure out what's important from them. And if it's something you can accommodate, like maybe and it wouldn't affect, hopefully negatively affect your business, that would make them so much happier, right? That is
Mhm.
an example of essentially using feedback mechanisms to improve a person's work-life balance. And I'll give you a couple of examples because I've just been talking in theory, right? So I have pharmacists that work in my pharmacy. Traditionally, pharmacists, usually work 5 days a week. But then one of my pharmacists was like, hey, like, she has a son who is a special needs son, and she has to take him for treatment like on Thursday. So I was like, well, hey, how about we just give you Thursday off? and we'll just make do on the other days. Maybe if you can work a little extra, or maybe, hey, can you do some, pharmaceutical research at home that I know I need your help in? And she was like so eternally, like really, really happy that we're able to accommodate. She was just like, I never thought I could find a pharmacy that would be able to kind of accommodate me. Because if you look at any job post for pharmacists, it's like Monday through Friday, like, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and things like that. That's just one option. Another area to kind of like really focus on is like maybe a time off policy, or even casual hangouts, right? A lot of people think, I worked with you all day long. Why do I want to hang out with you at a bar or a work event, right? Really think about what you want to do. If you're asking these people to give up some personal time to hang out after work to improve company environments, maybe you also consider letting them bring their family in, right? Or if it's going to be employee specific only, make sure it's something they really wanted to go to in the first place, right? It's not enough just to be like, oh, open bar, right? We all like open. I'm not gonna say we all like open bar. I like open bar. Clearly, I like I like open bar, but that might not be the best reason, and how much team building is really going to go there, right? So be a little bit more thoughtful on what you do with your employees, but don't guess. Just why don't you just ask them? Ask them like, hey, like what really moves the needle for you guys? And the last thing I wanted to say before I turn it over to you, Dr. Tauber, to kind of fill in any blanks and obviously give your feedback, is what I learned. It was the biggest game changer, and it's the most simplest thing. I learned it from my therapist. I've been going to, my wife is now a therapist, by the way. She left the tech scene, she left the ping pong tables, and she wanted to affect change an individual at a time. So she got her master's in counseling. So obviously, we're a family that is very big on mental health. And so I started seeing a therapist, I guess like almost like a year ago, maybe. And one thing he told me, he was like, the power of saying words like, thank you. I really appreciate you. And then maybe actually giving detail. Don't just say thank you, I appreciate you. Like, hey, this is why I appreciate you. I started doing that with my team. Like, instead of like just saying, hey, we're on a call, we got to talk about this, this, and this, and this. We got to take care of this. Like, sure, it's productive. But now a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times I start the call and it might be like 4 or 5 people on, might be one person on. I'll be like, hey, Carla, I wanted to thank you so much for what you did last week. Like, it was really, you really went above and beyond. And I really appreciate what you're doing. You're doing really great work. And thank you so much. Like, I really mean it. I don't know what I'd do without you. And that's it. To give a heartfelt, authentic thank you, sometimes it can mean just as much as a bonus pay. Not all times, maybe, unless depending on how much your bonus pay is, right? Like, who knows? But don't discount just being a nice, authentic person, right? And I think that's really gone a long way to seeing the leadership do that. And I encourage my team to do that. Like, hey, pass the kudos. Don't just pass negative feedback. Someone's doing a good job, you like what they do, let them know and be really appreciative. I'm not forcing you to, but I hope you will. Anyway, so with that said, Dr. Tauber, like, what do you think about all that, and any other areas that you think that suggestions you have?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, most people are not motivated, and it's kind of counterintuitive. Most people are not motivated by money, and we think they are. That, like, okay, if we gave them a raise, they'll be happier. They certainly won't turn down that raise. So, or you gave them a really big bonus, they'll be a lot happier. They'll really work hard now for me. And that's not the case. And like I said, they won't turn it down. But what most people want is exactly what you said right there. They want to be acknowledged. That goes a lot further. So if you acknowledge people, like you just gave that perfect example, it can be, a thank you, or appreciate you, or anything, or even, at the end of the month, this sounds kind of ridiculous, but employee of the month, you get a little special parking space in front, or a little plaque on the wall. That's what people want, is they want to be acknowledged. They just want to come to work and grind it out, and then just go home again. So, because you're just creating the work for a paycheck. I mean, and so I think that's exactly what you said, one of the biggest mistakes that all business owners make, is that money is going to solve everything. Of course you have to compensate, but they think that's going to be the answer to everything. We'll just pay them more, we'll give them a bigger bonus, and they should just appreciate that. No, they want acknowledgement. They want to be told that they're doing a good job every day, or every so often, or give them some sort of little plaque or accolades or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. That's, and of course, going to the bar, that's always good, but is that what your team wants? So inviting family, or having some sort of outing, or I know there's a lot of companies that do these group activities to kind of build that rapport where you actually get to know people as well outside of work, which then obviously creates a much stronger team than just going to work. Hey George, hey Harry, hey Marcia, and you go about your business and maybe you learn a little bit about them. But when you go outside of work and do these team building or these social activities, that creates a much stronger bond for people as well. So you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. I think also I have one pro tip, right? Personal pro tip. I don't know if it's appropriate for everybody, but I had an employee email me at 4 a.m. We're not open at 4 a.m. So before any of you judge me, I was like, I'm not open at 4 a.m. I am hopefully happily sleeping. But I had an employee email me at 4 a.m. and I know this employee has family, kids, and everything like that. I at first I figured, I was like, what is he doing at 4? And I didn't even find out why is he working at 4, but all I knew, he was working at 4. Nobody asked him to work at 4. Nobody asked him to respond to emails. You know what I did? I was like, of course. I was like, in my head, I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna thank him. I was like, hey, that's really nice of you to be like working at 4. No one expects you to work at 4. I hope you're getting your sleep. I recorded a video. And I sent it to him. And I was like, this video is not for you. This is for your family to watch. And it was a recording of me talking to them, saying how great of an employee this person was, and how proud I am of them, and what it means to me to have somebody like this in my life. I'm so honored to be working alongside this person. And that meant so much more to him. I mean, I'm sure, I would like to think it meant a lot to the family, but he was like, that meant a lot more to me than if you were just saying it to me. Right. And to me, I also knew the importance of it, because like, if he's sacrificing his personal time before anyone judges me, I didn't ask him to work at 4 a.m. But if he's clearly doing his mind's on work, I was like, I want his family to know. I want his family to know like what kind of person he is, because when you have, again, work-life balance, your life at home definitely affects work. They're always connected, right? So I
Absolutely.
wanted to make sure that like, hey, his life side understood what good things he's doing over here. So like, I think, doing creative things like that, and not just thinking like, hey, you can only affect somebody within 8 hours of a day or however long they're working. Like, no, you could probably affect them positively outside, and making somebody happier at 8 hours a day. Hopefully they take that positive energy and it translates back to the other areas of their life, whether it's with their family, with their friends, spiritually, mentally. You as an employer, you as a company, you as an employee of your company have far more power than you think you do. You might be thinking, oh, I just got hired. I don't have any power here. I don't have the ability to affect anybody. The way you interact with people, it definitely does. And it translates,
Mhm.
and it's like that butterfly effect. So I think, just grasping that concept and really trying to find ways to really like use that to your benefit. And obviously I'm Indian, I believe in karma. I love it. Good things happen. Just give good out in the world, it's going to bring good back in your life. I'm a really big believer in that. Anyways, would love to hear your thoughts on that, and any
Yeah.
other opinions, advice you have before we wrap up.
Oh, I got plenty of opinions, but no, I'm just
That's what we're here for.
no, but that's great. That one minute and a half video. I mean, that's incredible. That's a great story, because there's so many layers to that. Number one, you can say so many things and really say a lot, in people don't even realize that. And I do, so I know, because I do short videos and like little training videos. In a minute to a minute and a half, you can say a lot, and it goes a lot further than an email. And that's a creative way for doing that. And so for people who are not familiar, there's technology out there that you can do this so quickly. It's really very easy now. It doesn't mean like you have to set up all of this, fancy lighting and video and everything. But yeah, I mean, just little things, and letting the family know, because I'm sure, what do you think the conversation is at the end of the day, or over the dinner table, or whenever they're talking about their work? I'm sure they don't realize, what's going on. And for you as the employer to go ahead and let the family know how much you appreciate that employee is powerful. I mean, that guy or girl, whoever it is, probably going to be an employee for life. I mean, you're going to have a hard time, getting rid of that person just because of, what you just did. I mean, and that's what creates that teamwork, that collaboration, the happy environment. And, you know, going back to everything that we just talked about, it's just so much easier to keep people with just one little 1 minute, minute and a half video. And imagine what you would have to do to go replace that person. How much time, effort, and money would it take to replace that person and get them up to speed?
Absolutely.
Right?
I
To
hate
do their
employee
job.
attrition.
So,
It's such a pain. But coming from an ownership standpoint, it's like, no, I'd rather keep good people on my team, or usually I try and hire as best as I can, but I'd rather keep my team happy, right?
mm,
Versus having to go hire somebody as a replacement. If I hire, I hope it's to grow, right? I hope it's, I need to fill this position because we don't have anybody and we just want to grow it. But yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So
Yeah, I mean, as far as suggestions, I mean, just, it's really, you kind of go back to, some of these topics and these things, you just kind of go back to basics. Every year, all these, use a sports analogy metaphor. Everybody goes back to spring training. You've been playing baseball for 30 years, but every year you go back to what? To the basics of running and throwing and bunting, and go back to basics. Communication. Ask your employees what they want. Engage them. Do all of these simple things that we know that we should be doing, but somehow we just don't have the time, like in the course of our busy day. But make the time, and your law firm will be so much better for it. I mean, you'll have happier clients. You'll work better with providers. Case outcomes will be so much better when all of this is in place, and obviously that's going to have a positive or negative effect on your bottom line. So.
absolutely. Well, I wanted to thank you again, Dr. Tauber, for joining the Lean Line podcast to discuss the importance, of course, in company culture. And hopefully, you guys that are watching this found some tips that may be of benefit to you, to include or implement in your practice. Again, if you have any questions or want some more feedback from Dr. Tauber or I, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll help you as best we can. But until the next time, this is Dr. Patel signing off with the Lean Line podcast at Compliant Clients. Thank you, Dr. Tauber.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.